Some programs require the use of dates and times, for example, if you want to implement a calendar or a clock. Thankfully, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to implement those things because most programming languages have a built-in way to help you out. Hi, I'm Victor, and today in Height Above Sea Level, we'll be looking at dates and times in C#. Before we get started, if you want to talk more about this kind of thing, be sure to follow me on Twitch at Height Above Sea Level, where I do some live coding sessions as well as try and answer some of your questions as best I can. This video references a few concepts from the classes and methods videos, so if you feel lost at any point, watch those videos first and I'll link them to the top right of your screen. Alright, dates and times. C# has a couple of types you can use when dealing with dates and times. Let's say you wanted to work with just the date only. To do that, you will use the date only type. And this is how you declare it. So let's say sample date is equals to new date only, curly braces, parentheses like that. Remember, this is from the classes video, instantiating objects. So that's how you declare a date only type or date only object. But what happens when you write this on the console? Write that on the console, Control and F5. Give it a second. It says the first year of the first month, the first day of the first month of the first year. That is the default date time, the default date, because the date starts from the first day of the first month of the first year, and it goes all the way to the last 999th year, the last day of the last month at midnight. So this is a sample date, but we can add the date ourselves. So the year is going to be the first argument. Remember arguments. Then the month is February, and then the day is 15th. So if you write that on the console now, with Control and F5, February 15th, 2020, and this uses the the US type of system of using dates, because you can see the month is first, then the day, and then the year. All right, so that is how you declare a date only type. Let me write that here. Date only. But this date only object has a couple of properties and methods that you might be interested in. So if you press dot and go to the wrench again, you can look at the day, you can look at the day of the week, the day of year, the month, and the year. So why don't we look at one of them, like the day of the week. Control and F5. It's a Saturday, and you can even double check this with your calendar. February 15th of 2020 was a Saturday. And you can also look at the year if you want to access the year like that, 2020. So these are pretty much self-explanatory. It just gives you access to whatever property you want to look at, the day, day number, month, year, and whatever you want to look at, those are here. So I won't show you all of them because they're self-explanatory, they're very simple, and I'm sure you understand them. But why don't we look at a couple of methods? You can add a day, you can add a month, you can add a year to this DateTime object. So why don't we add a day? Add day. Let's say you want to add one day. So it's the 15th. If you add one day, what's it going to be? Well, you write that on the console, 16th, because we added one day to this date. You can even add a year. You can even say add years. You can add like 5 years. Control and F5. 2025, because we added 5 years to this 2020 object, date object. So those are also very simple. You can look at them. You can add a month. You can add a couple of other things. So I'll leave it to you to experiment with those. Very simple. You'll get them very quickly. But there's this method called to long date string and to short date string. So why don't we look at them? So you see right now, this is the format it's giving us. But if you wanted to get the long format, meaning you want to get the name of the day and the name of the month in full, we use to long date string. That gives us Saturday, February 15th, 2020. But the opposite of this is to short date string. So this is the default that it's been giving us. However, if you're given, let's say you had a date like this, you can call to short date string, and then that will give you the date like this. And that right there is a little bit of an intro to the sample date. If you only want to use the date only, but let's say you wanted to use just the time and say var sample time. And as you guessed it, there's time only. So why don't we write this on the console? So time only, the default time, let's look at sample time, is midnight. Midnight at the first day of the first month of the first year. That's the default time if you don't specify. But you can also specify the time yourself. So let's say the hour is 3, the minutes is 45, and the seconds are 10. And if you write the sample time on the console, now it's going to give us the time as 3:45 a.m. And this uses the military time. So if you want to say 3:45 p.m., you'll have to put 15, Control and F5. That's going to be p.m. And if you want to say anything that is in the p.m., probably remember it's using the military time. So this is going to be 10:45 p.m. And just like, let me write here first, time only. And just like this, the date only, you also have a couple of properties that you can look at. So if you click on put the dot, click on the wrench, you can look at the hour, the minute, the seconds, the milliseconds, whatever you want to see. So if you say dot hours, Control and F5, 22, because 22 is the hour. You can look at the minutes, you can look at the seconds, and so on and so forth. Again, just like before, you can also add, you click on this cube, you can also add hours, you can add minutes, you can also look at the to long date time and to short date time. So why don't we look at adding an hour? So let's say add hours, and I can add 1 hour. And what do you think it's going to be? It's 10 p.m. If I add 1 hour, it's going to be 11 p.m. Just like that. But let's say you add 10 hours, then this should be 32, which is invalid. So you should get oh, no, it's not. You added 10 hours of this. So 2 hours to midnight and then the remaining 8 hours. Okay, it works. Yeah, it works. I think I was confused there for a bit. You don't get an error. 8:45 p.m., which is 10 a.m., which is 10 hours ahead of 10:45 p.m. And that right there is the add hours method again. You can do others like add seconds, add minutes, and so on and so forth. But just like the date only as well, you have to short time string. So why don't we look at what it looks like currently? So this is 10:45, just the hour and the minutes. But if you wanted to look to see the seconds, you say to long time string, call that method, 10:45 p.m. and 10 seconds. We get to see the seconds, but the default behavior is without the seconds if you're using the time only. So again, you can call this to long time string if the time doesn't have the seconds, so that you see the seconds as well. And that right there is the time only object. But if you want to use the date and the time, how do you do it? You use the DateTime object. However, before we look at that, if you're enjoying the content, please consider supporting me over on Patreon at patreon.com/heightaboveelevel. And all patrons will get this custom Sakura theme that I came up with as a thank you from me. So if you did enjoy the content, go over there to patreon.com/heightaboveelevel, and you will get the instructions of how to set up your Visual Studio Code editor so it looks just like mine. All right, why don't we look at a date time object? So let's say date and time to a new date time object. So if you put this on the console, what do you think it's going to give us? It's going to give us the default value of the date and the time together, which is the first day of the first month of the first year at midnight. Remember, that's the default for the time. The midnight is default for the time. First month of the first day of the first year is the default date. But now we're using it together, both date and time. Let me make sure to put my arrows here just so it's a little bit more clear. And I can do that over here as well. But we can specify, just like these two, we can specify the date and the time. So let's say the date is, the year is 2021. The month is October 8th. The time is 12 or 1, and the hour is 1:13 The minute is 23, and the seconds is 14. Now, if you write this on the console, wait, there's an error. So 2021, this is the month. 2021 is the year. 20 is the month. 8th is the day. The hour is 13. Let me see if I put 12 here. Control F5. Unrepresentable date time. So I'm getting an error because one of my parameters here is invalid. So let's try that again. 2020 is the year. The month, I think the month, yeah, the month was the one that's wrong. Let's see. I think the month is the one that's wrong. Yeah, the month, there's no month that's 20. Remember, the month goes up to 12. There's no month that is 20. So if I put 12 here, this should work. Control F5. Yep. December 8th, 2021 at 1:23 a.m. I'm glad to see you got to see that error. So when you make an error, it says an unhandled exception. Exceptions are just ways to how the compiler tells you that you've made an error, and you'll have to debug your code to find the bug. If you don't know how to debug, I have a video for helping beginners debug code in C#, and I'll link that to the top right of your screen. Right now, we're in good shape, so we can go on. Now, this is a date time, just like the others as well. Put the dot, you can see the date, the day of the week, day of year, hour, minute, month, seconds, just like the date only and the time only, but now you see how them all together so that you can see all the properties. And this text is just the number of milliseconds, is it? No, ticks is the date and the time. That's the number of ticks that represent the date and the time of this instance. So in a nutshell, a tick is just the number of milliseconds from the first day of the first month of the first year at 12 midnight until now. Those are the number of ticks, but we won't be using those. So let's look at the hour. If I put the hour on the console, 1, because the hour here is 1. Remember, all these are self-explanatory. Again, you can use the add days, add years, add hours, add milliseconds, add whatever you want to add. Let's add months because we haven't used it. So let's say put this to April, and then we add 4 months. That should give us September 8th of the 8th month, which is 4 plus 4. And also, just like before, you can also use things like to short time string. If you just want the time, Control and F5, we just get the time, 1:23 a.m. Again, you can also do to long time string. The long time string gives you the seconds. You can also do to long date string, and just like the others, it's the same thing. Thursday, April 8th, 2021. But if you want to get both of them, it's an interesting way to do it. It's called toString, parentheses, and then when you press the opening and closing quotes, you'll get this menu. And this menu over here tells you what you type inside those quotes, or you can just select it manually over here and it'll type it for you. So let's say you want the long date time, dates and time. So if you scroll over here, we're looking for long date time, full long date and time. There, Control and F5. Now we get Thursday, April 8th, 2021 with the time, with the seconds included as well. So that right there is dates and time in a nutshell. So why don't we move on? I hope it's simple and it's self-explanatory. So I hope you're understanding everything. If not, ask me in the comments below and I'll be sure to try and answer it as best I can. All right, why don't we move on to what's known as a time span? And this is the last thing before we finish up. A time span is the duration in time or elapsed time since a start time. So just like the name suggests, a time span is a span of time. Don't need to complicate things, that's how it is. So let's create a time span object. So you can say time span is equal to a new time span. And if you write this on the console, CW, I can maybe comment this Control K, Control C. CW, write on the console the time span. So the default time span Oh, I deleted that, so I can do that again. Timespan, closing parentheses, then Control and F5, 0, 0, 0. So the hour, this 0 is the hour, the minutes, and the seconds. It even looks like a stopwatch, which tells you that it's a time, duration of time between a start time and a stop time. The time you started and the time you stopped. That time in between is a time span. But we can also say, we can add the hours, like 10 hours. We can add 4 minutes, and we can have 10 seconds. So now time span is going to be 10 hours, 4 minutes, 10 seconds. Again, time span also has properties. Just like the others before, click on the wrench. You can look at the minutes, the seconds, the days, the hours, all that. But time span is interesting because it has hours and total hours. So what does this mean? So when you say hours, that's going to give us this 10. Control and F5, just the 10 hours. But if you want to have the total hours, which means the total hours in this whole time span, 10 hours, 4 minutes, and 10 seconds, if you want to have all that in hours, we can say total hours. And that should give you the decimal points as well, 10 hours and point whatever this is, 0.6944. But let's look at minutes. Minutes should be a bit better. So the current minutes right now is just 4. Control and F5, 4 minutes. But if you want the total minutes in this 10 hours, 4 minutes, and 10 seconds, we will use total minutes. Control and F5, 604 minutes, 0.1666. And 10 hours there, 60 times 10, 600, 600 plus 4, 604. And then point this, whatever this is, if I put 30 seconds, it should be a bit clear. 604.5 minutes inside 10 hours, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds. So that right there is a time span. An interesting thing is you can create a time span by subtracting 2 date times. So why don't we create the date time a couple of days or a couple of dates. An interesting way to do this is you can also say use the DateTime enum. So you can say DateTime dot now. This is how you use the enum, the DateTime enum. I believe this is an enum. Let me check again. DateTime. No, the DateTime object, the DateTime class or struct, and then this is a property. I thought it was an enum, but it's a struct, and this is one of its properties. So DateTime.now is the current time the current date and time. If I press Control and F5, it is April 16th, 2022, and it's 3:35 p.m. And how do I know this is correct? If you look at the time over here, it's 3:35. It is April 16th, 2022. That is the time right now. And this is going to vary based on your machine. So if you use DateTime.now, it's going to give the time according to your machine. So that's a really helpful way for people in different times and cultures and different time zones. If you put DateTime.now, it will use the time they have set. I believe that's what it does. It uses the time they have set here, and you won't have to worry about adjusting hours ahead and behind and so on and so forth. You can also do today is equals to DateTime.today. And that just gives me the date. So if I put this on the console, today is this. It doesn't give me the time, but it gives me the date. So how does this all tie into time span? So let's say tomorrow is equals to today.addDays 1. If I add a date today, then that becomes tomorrow. And you can even write tomorrow dot to long time date string, and that should give me Sunday. Remember, today is Saturday, April 16th. Tomorrow is going to be Sunday, April 17th. All right, now back to time span. I can say difference is equals to tomorrow minus today. And if you hover over var, you will see that it is a time span. And we can say difference, write that on the console, Control and F5, 1 day. No hours, no minutes, no seconds. But if I want to get the total hours, Control and F5, 24 hours between tomorrow and today. You can even get the total minutes, 1440, which is 24 multiplied by 60. So let me just write here, time span can also be acquired, if that's the right word I'm using, acquired by subtracting one date time from another. All right, and that is the time span in a nutshell. Real quick, as I'm winding up, I want to let you know that you can also use date time in a class as a property, as a field, or as a return type, or a parameter in methods. So you can say, this is our car class that you made in the classes video. So you can also say private, you can say date time created. Yeah, so you can say day created, date created, and this works fine as well. You can also use it in a property, prop, date time. You can say destruction date. Doesn't make sense, but it's just to just for demonstration purposes. Again, you can also say date time here, time stopped, and you can even return it as you're going to return it in a method. And that right there are dates and times in C#. With that is all I had for you guys. Did you learn about dates today? Did you learn about times? And was I going too fast or too slowly? Let me know in the comments below. I hope this video helped you. And if it did, consider supporting me over on Patreon at patreon.com/heightabove-level. And as a thank you, you will get this custom Sakura theme from me with all the instructions of how to set it up. Again, I do stream on Twitch if you want to talk about this kind of thing live on stream. But if that doesn't work, come hang out on Discord instead. Just click the link in the description below and become a member of our water tribe today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, from me to you, deuces.